My parents took in my orphaned cousin to replace their dead daughter, let her beat me for years, and called me aggressive when I finally fought back. When I tried to tell them the truth, my dad just said, "Son, your sister loves you." I didn't say a word. That was 4 years ago. Last month, she watched me across the gas station pump, nodded once, and drove away. Growing up, there was just one rule: to never hit a woman. Obviously, it was something I never even struggled with until my 12th birthday. You see, my older sister used to hit my A on the regular. One time, I had a really bad dream, and my parents' bedroom door was locked, so I slept outside hers, because even just knowing I was near my big sis was comforting. But unfortunately, she woke up before me and hit me up so bad that I ended up going to school with bruises all over me. Her reasoning? For blocking her doorway. And when I turned 12, I started to get sick of it. It all started when I accidentally fell down the stairs. It was late at night, so my thumping woke her up. And instead of helping me up or even just ignoring me, she stomped down the stairs and kicked the back of my legs. But I was ready. I grabbed her leg and pinched it super hard. Except my little act of revenge didn't feel as good as I thought it would. In fact, it made me feel worse. So much so that I started crying for being such a terrible brother and let her hit me back 10 times harder. And don't get me wrong, I loved my parents, but I know they saw my bruises, my cuts. I know they could hear me crying in pain late at night, but they never did anything because they were unfortunately extremely passive. And in their eyes, it was okay because she was a girl hitting a boy, not the other way around. Plus, when we all hung out as a family, she had the caring big sister role down to a T. Whenever we crossed the road, she would gently extend her arm to stop me crossing too soon. She'd always run ahead of us and make sure to hold open every door for the family and for strangers. It was sickening, but one good thing did come out of it: my muscles. You see, I let all of the resentment she caused to force me to lift heavier at the gym. So by 16, not only was I on the varsity football team, but I was also jacked, and she was in the grade ahead of me, a junior. So I was constantly hearing about the gossip in her class. At this point, she had stopped hitting me simply because I was too big, and all I wanted was to have a good relationship with her. So when I heard that she was dating the star quarterback Derek in her grade, I made sure to keep a close eye on him. He seemed nice at first, but they always do. It wasn't even 3 weeks into their relationship when he cheated on her with her best friend. I was literally in the same room as her when she found out. Derek had sent her a video on Snapchat of him making out with her best friend. I ignored her crying and followed his Snap Map location. She confirmed it was his address and asked if she could sit in the car and watch. I smirked because that dude was scrawny compared to me. I knew his brains were about to be minced meat on the sidewalk, and I was right. When we got there, she knocked on the door because there was no way Derek would open if he saw me. As soon as her best friend opened up, I pushed past her and found Derek leaning against the wall in the hallway. I didn't want to go to jail, so I just hit him until he finally said the words, "Monica is my queen," my sister's name, and we left. On the car ride home, I almost crashed because Monica kept replaying the video, and I was laughing my A off. At that moment, I knew our relationship had been rebuilt, or so I thought, because as it turns out, the only relationship that was rebuilt was the one with Derek. They got back together a week later. When I asked Monica what the F she was doing, she told me everyone deserves a second chance. Plus, she wanted to make her ex-best friend jealous. I told her that if he did anything this time, I wouldn't get involved, and she ended up sulking for the rest of the evening. Whatever. 2 days later, when our parents weren't home, I heard a knock on the door. It was Monica. I opened up, and suddenly 2 guys I didn't recognize were wailing on me. Red was pouring out of my head, and they only stopped when they heard a car pulling up in the driveway. It was my dad. "Oh my gosh, what happened?" Monica yelled as soon as my dad walked in, pretending like she hadn't been home, like she hadn't orchestrated the whole thing. My dad's face went ghost white. I ended up in the hospital with a concussion, a fractured rib, and a dislocated shoulder. As soon as Monica left to go to the bathroom, I told my dad what had happened as quickly as I could. "Son, your sister would never do that. She loves you." "Dad, please. She's been hitting me since I was a child. These bruises are all from Monica." By this point, tears were streaming down my face. I didn't even want Monica to be punished. I just wanted him to believe me. Instead, he put his hand on my shoulder and told me to get some rest. A few hours later, I woke up to my uncle sitting beside me. After getting the "how are you feeling" conversation out of the way, he leaned in really close and began to whisper, "Your father believes you. We all do." Confusion flooded my body. Turns out, Monica wasn't actually my sister at all. She was my cousin who my parents had taken in when I was 3 after her parents died. My real sister had died as a baby, and they never told me the truth. They thought raising her as my sister would help us both heal. But instead, it created a monster who resented being the replacement child. I stared at my uncle in disbelief. The room spun around me, not from the concussion, but from the weight of what he just revealed. Monica wasn't my sister. She was my cousin. My real sister had died as a baby. Everything I thought I knew about my family shattered in that hospital room. My uncle squeezed my good shoulder. He explained how Monica's parents had died in a car accident when she was barely 4. My parents, still grieving their own loss, took her in immediately. They thought giving me a sister would help everyone heal. Instead, it created a situation where Monica felt like a replacement, a stand-in for the daughter they'd lost. The door creaked open. Monica walked back in, her face the perfect mask of concern. She rushed to my bedside, gently touching my bandaged head. My uncle stood up, giving her a long look before leaving. As soon as the door closed, her expression changed. The fake worry melted away, replaced by something cold and calculating. She leaned close to my ear. Her breath felt like ice against my skin. She whispered that if I ever told anyone about Derek's friends, she'd make sure I regretted it. Then she straightened up, smiled sweetly, and called for the nurse to check on me. The next few days blurred together. I stayed home from school, nursing my injuries. My parents tiptoed around the house, avoiding real conversation. They brought me soup, checked my bandages, but never mentioned what my uncle had told me. The silence felt heavier than my injuries. Monica played her role perfectly. She brought me homework from school, sat with me during dinner, even offered to help me up the stairs. My parents watched with guilty eyes, seeing her performance but unable to confront it. Their passivity had enabled years of abuse, and now they seemed paralyzed by their own choices. On my 4th day home, I heard Monica on the phone in her room. Through the thin walls, I caught fragments of her conversation with Derek. She was planning something for when I returned to school. I couldn't make out all the details, but I heard her mention the football team and something about teaching me a lesson. That evening, my uncle visited again. My parents were at the grocery store, and Monica had gone to Derek's house. We sat in the living room, and he told me more about my real sister. She'd lived only 3 months. My parents had been devastated. When Monica's parents died just a year later, they saw it as a sign. They could give Monica a home and fill the void in our family. My uncle had warned them it might not work. Children aren't replaceable. Grief doesn't transfer neatly from one loss to another. But my parents, desperate and grieving, hadn't listened. They'd introduced Monica as my sister from day one, thinking the lie would become truth if they believed it hard enough. He showed me old photos on his phone, pictures of my parents holding a tiny baby girl, my real sister. Their faces glowed with joy I'd never seen. Then photos from Monica's arrival, my parents forcing smiles while holding a confused 4-year-old girl who just lost everything. I finally understood Monica's rage. She'd been forced into a role she never asked for, made to fill shoes that could never fit. Every birthday, every family photo, every moment must have reminded her that she was the replacement. It didn't excuse the beatings, but it explained them. My uncle left when we heard my parents' car in the driveway. He promised to talk to them, to push them to finally address the situation. But I knew my parents. Confrontation went against every fiber of their being. They'd rather live in comfortable lies than face uncomfortable truths. That night at dinner, Monica performed her caring sister act flawlessly. She cut my meat since my shoulder made it hard to use both hands. She refilled my water glass without being asked. My parents watched with pained expressions, the truth sitting between us like an unwelcome guest. After dinner, I retreated to my room. Through my window, I watched Monica sneak out to meet Derek. My ribs protested as I shifted to get a better view. She climbed into his car, and they drove off. I knew she was planning something, but I felt powerless to stop it. Next morning, my dad knocked on my door. He sat on the edge of my bed, looking older than I'd ever seen him. He started to speak several times, then stopped. Finally, he managed to tell me they should have handled things differently. Not an apology exactly, but the closest he could manage. He explained how they'd thought love would be enough. They believed that if they loved Monica like their own daughter, she'd become their daughter. They hadn't considered how she might feel, being asked to replace a ghost. They'd been so focused on their own grief, they'd missed hers. I wanted to scream at him, to demand why they'd let her hurt me for years, why they'd watched me suffer in silence. But looking at his broken expression, I realized he'd been suffering too. They all had. Our entire family had been built on a foundation of unprocessed grief and well-meaning lies. Monica returned home that afternoon with Derek. They sat in the living room, supposedly doing homework. I stayed in my room, but I could hear their whispered conversations. Derek kept mentioning Friday's football game. Monica assured him everything would go according to plan. My injuries had healed enough for me to return to school that week. The thought terrified terrified me. Whatever Monica had planned involved the football team, and I was already vulnerable. My ribs still ached, my shoulder remained stiff. I wouldn't be able to defend myself if things went bad. Wednesday night, my uncle called. He'd spoken to my parents again, pushing them to take action. They'd agreed to family counseling, but not until after Monica graduated. Another year of pretending, another year of enabling. I hung up, feeling more alone than ever. Thursday morning, I prepared for school. Monica offered to drive me, playing the concerned sister perfectly. My parents practically glowed at her kindness. In the car, she dropped the act. She told me to stay away from the football field on Friday. When I asked why, she just smiled and turned up the radio. At school, whispers followed me through the halls. People stared at my still visible bruises, at the way I held my shoulder. Some of Derek's friends smirked when they saw me. The football team acted strange during practice, exchanging looks whenever I was around. That evening, I overheard Monica on another phone call. This time, she was talking to multiple people, coordinating something. She mentioned my name several times, followed by laughter. Whatever she'd planned, it was bigger than just Derek and his friends. I considered telling my parents, but what would be the point? They'd make excuses, avoid confrontation, maybe have a gentle talk with Monica that would change nothing. I thought about calling my uncle, but he'd already tried. The adults in my life had failed me for years. I couldn't count on them now. Friday arrived with a sick feeling in my stomach. Monica left early, saying she had student council meetings. My parents drove me to school, reminding me to be careful with my injuries. They had no idea what their daughter had planned for me. The school day crawled by. Every passing period, I noticed more strange looks, more whispered conversations that stopped when I approached. The football team avoided me completely. Even my few friends seemed distant, like they knew something I didn't. During lunch, I finally learned part of Monica's plan. Someone had started a rumor that I'd attacked Derek unprovoked, that I was jealous of my sister's boyfriend. They said I'd hired those guys to hit me up to cover my tracks. The story was ridiculous, but people believed what they wanted to believe. By the final bell, the entire school seemed to have chosen sides. Most sided with Monica and Derek, the popular couple. I was just the weird kid with anger issues who'd attacked the star quarterback. Monica had turned my one act of defending her into evidence of my instability. I skipped the football game. Instead, I walked home alone, my injuries aching with each step. The house was empty when I arrived. My parents had gone to their weekly dinner date, maintaining their routine despite our family falling apart. I sat in my room, staring at old family photos. In every picture, Monica played her part perfectly. The loving sister, the grateful daughter, the victim who'd lost her real parents and found a new family. I wondered if she'd ever felt genuine affection for us, or if it had always been an act. My phone buzzed with texts from teammates asking where I was, then more texts, these ones containing videos. My blood ran cold as I watched. Someone had edited footage to make it look like I'd been harassing Monica for weeks. They twisted innocent moments into something sinister. The front door slammed. Monica was home. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, then she appeared in my doorway. Her face showed mock sympathy. She asked if I'd seen what people were saying about me online. When I didn't respond, she laughed. She walked into my room uninvited, picking up one of our family photos. She traced her finger over her own face in the picture. Then she told me how she'd felt when my parents first explained she was replacing their dead daughter. How every achievement, every milestone was compared to what might have been. She set the photo down and looked at me directly. Years of resentment burned in her eyes. She said I had no idea what it was like to be the consolation prize, the second choice, the living reminder of what was lost. My parents might have taken her in, but they'd never truly seen her. I wanted to argue, to point out that none of that justified years of abuse, but I stayed silent. Monica had already won this round. The school believed her version of events. My reputation was destroyed, and my parents would never take decisive action against their replacement daughter. She left my room with a warning. This was just the beginning. If I thought some edited videos and rumors were bad, I hadn't seen anything yet. She had plans that would make everyone see me as the villain. After years of playing the perfect sister, she'd earned their trust. No one would believe me over her. That night, I lay awake planning my next move. Monica had made her intentions clear. She would continue escalating until I was completely isolated, but she'd also revealed her weakness, her deep resentment about being the replacement child. If I could somehow use that. My phone lit up with a text from my uncle. He was coming over tomorrow to talk to the whole family. He wouldn't let my parents postpone the confrontation any longer. It was time for the truth to come out, whether they were ready or not. I closed my eyes, knowing tomorrow would change everything. Monica's campaign against me would intensify. My parents would be forced to face their choices, and I would have to decide whether to keep taking the abuse or finally fight back against the cousin who tormented me while wearing my dead sister's identity. The house settled into uneasy quiet. Somewhere down the hall, Monica was probably planning her next move. My parents would return soon, oblivious to the war brewing under their roof, and I lay there, caught between a truth that could destroy our family and a lie that already had. The morning arrived with my uncle's car pulling into our driveway at exactly 9 a.m. I watched from my bedroom window as he walked to the front door with determined steps. My parents answered together, their faces already showing the strain of what was coming. Monica emerged from her room wearing her most innocent expression, the one she perfected over 13 years of deception. We gathered in the living room. My uncle positioned himself strategically between Monica and me. He pulled out a folder thick with papers and photographs. My parents shifted uncomfortably on the couch, while Monica maintained her sweet daughter facade, though I noticed her fingers drumming against her thigh. My uncle began by laying out printed screenshots of text messages between Monica and Derek from the past week. The messages detailed their plan to have me struck up. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face drained of color. Monica's expression never wavered, but her drumming fingers stilled. She launched into her performance immediately. Tears welled in her eyes as she claimed the messages were fake, that I must have created them because I was jealous of her relationship with Derek. She reminded my parents how I'd attacked Derek unprovoked, how I'd always been aggressive toward her. My uncle let her finish, then produced phone records showing the messages originated from her number. The room erupted into chaos. Monica jumped to her feet, accusing my uncle of conspiring with me against her. She brought up her dead parents, how we'd never accepted her as real family, how this was just another attempt to push her out. My mother started crying. My father stood frozen between his brother and the girl he'd raised as a daughter. I remained silent throughout the confrontation. My uncle had coached me beforehand to let Monica dig her own grave. She was doing exactly that, her story changing every few minutes as new evidence emerged. First, the messages were fake, then they were taken out of context, then they were just jokes between her and Derek. My uncle produced more evidence. Security footage from our neighbor's camera showing Monica letting Derek's friends into our house that day. Bank statements showing she'd withdrawn money the morning of the attack. Screenshots of her social media posts creating the false narrative about me being unstable and violent. Monica's mask finally cracked. She turned on my parents with venom I'd never seen her display in front of them. She screamed about being forced to replace their dead baby, about living in a ghost's shadow, about how they'd never loved her for who she really was. She admitted to everything, but justified it as self-defense against a family that had psychologically tortured her for years. My parents sat in stunned silence as 13 years of lies unraveled before them. They'd been so desperate to heal their grief that they'd created a monster and enabled her abuse of their actual son. The weight of their choices crushed them as they finally saw what their passivity had wrought. Monica stormed out of the room and up to her bedroom. We heard drawers slamming and objects being thrown around. My uncle advised my parents to call Derek's parents immediately and inform them of the situation. They needed to know their son had participated in assault and harassment. While my father made that difficult call, my mother approached me for the first time since the hospital. She couldn't meet my eyes as she apologized through tears. She admitted to seeing the bruises, hearing the crying, knowing something was wrong but being too afraid to confront it. Her guilt was suffocating. Monica reappeared with a suitcase, announcing she was leaving to stay with Derek. My uncle blocked her path and informed her that Derek's parents were already aware of the situation and wouldn't be welcoming her. Her escape route had been cut off before she could use it. The next several hours passed in a blur of difficult conversations and painful admissions. My parents finally told me the full truth about my sister who died, showing me photos they'd hidden away. They explained their decision to take in Monica, the grief-driven logic that had doomed us all from the start. Monica retreated to her room and refused to come out. We could hear her on the phone, frantically calling friends and trying to find somewhere else to stay. Each call ended with rejection, as my uncle had already contacted the parents of her closest friends to warn them about the situation. That evening, my uncle helped my parents research therapists who specialized in family trauma and adoption issues. They also began looking into alternative living arrangements for Monica. She couldn't stay in our house anymore, not after everything that had been exposed. The safety of their actual child had to come first. I spent the night in the guest room, unable to sleep in my own bed knowing Monica was just down the hall. Every creak of the house made me tense, expecting another attack. My uncle stayed too, sleeping on the couch to ensure Monica couldn't orchestrate any more violence. The next morning brought a new crisis. Monica had posted a lengthy social media rant during the night, painting herself as the victim of an abusive family who'd never accepted her. She claimed we were kicking her out for defending herself against years of psychological torture. The post went viral in our school community. My phone exploded with messages. Some supported Monica's version, others questioned the inconsistencies in her story. The edited videos she posted of me had already damaged my reputation, and now the situation was spiraling beyond our family's control. My uncle advised documenting everything before Monica could delete evidence. I screenshot her posts, saved the hostile messages she'd sent me, and backed up the security footage. He warned that Monica would likely escalate further when cornered, and we needed to be prepared. His prediction proved accurate. That afternoon, while my parents met with a family counselor, Monica attempted to break into my room. I'd wedged a chair under the doorknob on my uncle's advice. She pounded on the door, screaming that I'd ruined her life, that I'd stolen her family, that she'd make me pay. I recorded her threats on my phone while texting my uncle, who was in the kitchen. He arrived quickly, but Monica had already retreated to her room. When he knocked on her door, she played innocent again, claiming I'd been harassing her and she'd simply asked me to stop. The psychological warfare continued for days. Monica would switch between playing the victim for my parents and making subtle threats when we were alone. She'd leave notes under my door, detailing how she'd destroy my reputation further. She'd stand outside my room at night, just breathing loudly enough for me to hear. My parents struggled to accept the full extent of Monica's behavior. They'd lived in denial for so long that facing reality felt impossible. The family counselor worked with them to understand how their grief and guilt had enabled years of abuse. Progress was slow and painful. Meanwhile, I returned to school to find the social dynamics completely altered. Monica had done her work well. Half the students believed I was an unstable bully who'd attacked my sister's boyfriend out of jealousy. The other half sensed something didn't add up, but were afraid to get involved. Derek kept his distance, but his friends made their presence known. They'd bump into me in hallways, knock books from my hands, and whisper threats about finishing what they'd started. I documented each incident, building a case file on my uncle's advice. Monica's campaign intensified at school. She'd cry in public spaces where teachers would see, running away whenever I approached. She told anyone who'd listened that I was stalking her, that she feared for her safety. Several teachers began watching me with suspicion. One particularly bad day, I found my locker vandalized with spray paint, calling me a psycho. The janitor helped me clean it while muttering about kids these days. I knew Monica hadn't done it directly, but her influence was spreading like poison through the school. My uncle worked behind the scenes to counter Monica's narrative. He met with the principal to present evidence of the orchestrated assault and Monica's ongoing harassment. The principal, shocked by the revelations, promised to monitor the situation, but admitted his hands were tied without formal complaints. At home, the tension reached unbearable levels. Monica had perfected the art of psychological torture within the constraints my parents had set. She couldn't physically attack me anymore, but she found other ways to inflict damage. She'd move my belongings, delete my homework files, and contaminate my food with things she knew I hated. My parents installed locks on bedroom doors and set up a schedule to ensure Monica and I were never alone together, but she always found ways around their precautions. She picked the locks while they slept, leaving evidence of her presence just to prove she could. A moved photograph here, a missing assignment there. The breaking point came 3 weeks after the initial confrontation. I woke up to find Monica standing over my bed at 3 a.m. She wasn't doing anything, just standing there in the darkness, watching me sleep. When I jolted awake, she smiled and walked out without a word. I couldn't take it anymore. The next morning, I packed a bag and asked my uncle if I could stay with him. My parents protested weakly, but they knew the situation had become untenable. Their house wasn't safe for me as long as Monica remained there. Living with my uncle provided immediate relief. I could sleep without fear, eat without checking for tampering, and exist without constant vigilance. But I knew this was just a temporary solution. Monica was still out there, still plotting, still determined to destroy me. She escalated her social media campaign once I left. She posted photos of my empty room with captions about being abandoned by her brother. She shared old pictures of us together from happier times, writing emotional posts about missing what we used to have. People who didn't know the truth ate it up. My uncle helped me craft a careful response. We posted the security footage of the assault, the screenshots of Monica's planning messages, and a timeline of events. We didn't attack her directly, but simply presented facts. The tide of public opinion began to shift as people saw the evidence. Monica responded by claiming the evidence was doctored, that my uncle was helping me frame her, but cracks appeared in her support system. Some of her friends began questioning her changing stories. Derek distanced himself, not wanting to be associated with the mounting controversy. At school, teachers who'd initially believed Monica's victim act started noticing inconsistencies. She claimed to be terrified of me, but would deliberately seek out confrontations when authority figures were watching. She'd cry about being bullied while simultaneously spreading rumors about other students who supported me. My uncle documented everything meticulously. He taught me to save every interaction, every witness statement, every piece of evidence. He explained that Monica's pattern of behavior would eventually become impossible to deny, but we needed patience and thoroughness. The family counselor continued working with my parents, helping them understand the depth of damage their choices had caused. They began to see how their grief over my dead sister had blinded them to Monica's abuse. The guilt nearly destroyed them, but the counselor guided them toward accountability rather than self-destruction. Monica's behavior at home deteriorated without me there to target. She turned her manipulation toward my parents, alternating between playing the abandoned daughter and making subtle threats about what she might do if they didn't support her. They finally saw the monster they'd created and enabled. One evening, my mother called me in tears. Monica had destroyed all the photos of my real sister in a rage, claiming my parents loved a dead baby more than they'd ever loved her. It was the final straw. My mother realized Monica would never heal, never change, never become the daughter they'd tried to force her to be. My parents made the difficult decision to contact Monica's extended family. Her biological grandparents were still alive, living 2 states away. They'd lost touch after Monica's parents died, respecting my parents' wishes to raise her as their own. Now my parents reached out, explaining the situation and asking for help. The grandparents were horrified to learn what had become of their granddaughter. They'd always wondered, but had been told Monica was thriving in her new family. They agreed to take her in, hoping a fresh start might help her heal from the trauma of losing her parents and being forced into an impossible role. Monica fought the decision viciously. She accused my parents of abandoning her just like her birth parents had by dying. She threatened to run away, to hurt herself, to destroy our family's reputation. But for once, my parents held firm. They'd enabled her for too long, and it had to stop. The transition period was hellish. Monica sabotaged everything she could. She told anyone who'd listen that she was being thrown away like garbage. She posted increasingly unhinged content on social media, making wild accusations about abuse and neglect. Some people believed her, but more began to see the pattern of manipulation. My uncle hired a lawyer to send cease and desist letters regarding the defamation. Monica ignored them, but the formal documentation proved important later. The lawyer also helped my parents navigate the legal complexities of transferring guardianship to Monica's grandparents. During this time, I focused on rebuilding my life. My grades had suffered during the worst of Monica's campaign, but my teachers were understanding once they knew the truth. I rejoined the football team, though some teammates remained suspicious. Slowly, I began to reclaim my reputation. Monica made one last desperate play before leaving. She convinced a few remaining allies to vandalize my uncle's house, spray painting accusations on his garage door, but she'd underestimated my uncle's preparedness. His security cameras caught everything, including Monica directing the vandalism from across the street. The police finally became involved. While my parents had resisted pressing charges for the assault, vandalism of my uncle's property was a separate matter. Monica's accomplices quickly turned on her when faced with legal consequences, admitting she'd manipulated them into acting. Faced with potential criminal charges, Monica finally agreed to leave with her grandparents. The night before her departure, she left a letter under my old bedroom door. My mother found it and brought it to my uncle's house. I read it once and threw it away. It was full of blame, self-pity, and threats of future revenge. Her grandparents picked her up on a Sunday morning. I watched from my uncle's window as they loaded her belongings into their car. She looked up once, making eye contact with me through the glass. The hatred in her eyes was chilling, but also somehow pitiful. She was leaving, but I knew this wasn't over. The house felt different with Monica gone. My parents walked through it like ghosts, seeing her manipulation in every corner. They found hidden cameras she placed to spy on family activities. They discovered journals full of detailed plans to psychologically torture me. The depth of her calculation was staggering. I moved back home gradually, spending a few nights a week at first. My parents had changed. They attended therapy religiously, both individually and and as a couple. They read books about enabling behavior and toxic family dynamics. They apologized to me daily until I asked them to stop. School improved dramatically without Monica's presence. People who'd been afraid to support me came forward with their own stories of her manipulation. Teachers admitted they'd suspected something was wrong, but hadn't known how to intervene. Derek transferred to another school to escape the scandal. My uncle remained a constant presence, checking in regularly and maintaining his documentation system. He warned that Monica might attempt to return or retaliate once she turned 18. We needed to remain vigilant while also trying to heal and move forward. The healing process was slow and difficult. I had nightmares about Monica standing over my bed. I flinched when people moved too quickly near me. I struggled to trust anyone who showed kindness, waiting for the manipulation to reveal itself. Therapy helped, but some wounds went too deep for quick fixes. My parents struggled with their own trauma. They'd lost their daughter twice, first to death, and then to the revelation that their replacement daughter was a remorseless abuser. They questioned every parenting decision, every moment of blindness, every enabled abuse. Their guilt was a living thing that threatened to consume them. We learned to be a family again in Monica's absence. We had dinner together without performance or pretense. We talked about difficult topics without fear of manipulation. We began to build the honest relationships that Monica's presence had made impossible. Updates from Monica's grandparents came sporadically. She was in therapy, they said, but resisted to treatment. She maintained her victim narrative, blaming our family for all her problems. But away from the dynamics she'd cultivated, her manipulation had less power. Her grandparents saw through it, having raised their own children successfully. 6 months after Monica left, I received a message from an unknown number. It was brief. This isn't over. I showed it to my uncle, who traced it to a burner phone purchased near Monica's new home. We filed a police report, adding to the paper trail of her harassment. My senior year began with cautious optimism. Monica's influence had faded, replaced by the truth of what she'd done. I made new friends, dated tentatively, and focused on college applications. I wrote my personal essay about overcoming abuse and the importance of breaking toxic cycles. The acceptance letters arrived in spring. I'd been accepted to several good schools, including one across the country. The distance felt necessary, a chance to build an identity completely separate from the trauma Monica had inflicted. My parents supported the decision, understanding my need for space. Graduation day arrived with mixed emotions. My parents sat in the audience, proud but haunted by the empty seat beside them. Monica should have graduated the year before, but she'd been held back after missing too much school during her final months with us. Her absence was both a relief and a reminder. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The bruises had faded, the broken bones had healed, but the psychological scars remained. Monica had stolen my childhood, but she wouldn't steal my future. My uncle hosted a small graduation party at his house. Family friends attended, people who'd supported us through the nightmare. We didn't talk about Monica, focusing instead on the future, but I could see the knowledge in everyone's eyes, the awareness of what we'd survived. That night, I found my parents sitting in the backyard, looking at old photos, not of Monica, but of my real sister. They told me her name was Sarah. She lived for 93 days. They showed me her tiny footprints, her hospital bracelet, the few precious photos they had. We cried together for the daughter and sister we'd never known. The summer passed quickly as I prepared for college. I worked extra hours to save money, spent time with friends who'd stood by me, and continued therapy to prepare for living independently. The hypervigilance Monica had instilled was hard to shake, but I was learning to feel safe again. My uncle helped me develop a safety plan for college. We notified campus security about Monica's history of harassment. We set up monitoring for my social media and email accounts. We established check-in protocols and emergency contacts. It felt excessive, but Monica had taught us the danger of underestimating her. The week before I left for college, my mother revealed she was pregnant. At 42, she hadn't expected it, but she and my father were cautiously excited. They learned hard lessons about parenting, about grief, about the dangers of trying to replace what was lost. This child would be loved for who they were, not who they were expected to be. I helped my parents pack up Monica's old room, finally ready to reclaim that space. We found more evidence of her surveillance, her plans, her deep-seated hatred, but we also found glimpses of the scared 4-year-old who'd lost everything. It didn't excuse her actions, but it reminded us that trauma could twist people into monsters if left untreated. My last night at home, I sat with my parents and uncle, talking about the future. We survived Monica's campaign of terror, but we were all forever changed. Trust came harder now. Joy felt more fragile, but we'd also learned the importance of truth, of facing difficult realities, of protecting those we loved even when it meant making painful choices. As I loaded my car for the drive to college, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Monica was out there somewhere, possibly planning her next move, but I was stronger now, supported by people who'd proven they'd protect me. I'd learned to document threats, to trust my instincts, to refuse to be silenced by manipulation. The drive to campus took 2 days. I stopped at roadside motels, double-checking locks and keeping my phone charged. Monica had made me paranoid, but that paranoia had also kept me safe. I'd rather be overly cautious than caught off guard again. I arrived at campus with my guard up. The orientation week activities felt surreal after everything I'd been through. My roommate, a guy named Cole from the Midwest, noticed my hypervigilance immediately. I explained my situation vaguely, mentioning family troubles. He nodded understandingly and promised to respect my need for security measures. The first few weeks passed without incident. I threw myself into classes, joined study groups, and even attended a few parties, but I never fully relaxed. I learned from Monica that danger often came disguised as normalcy. My uncle and I maintained our weekly check-ins, reviewing any suspicious activity. Then the packages started arriving. No return address, just my name written in Monica's distinctive handwriting. The first contained photos of me around campus, taken from a distance. The second held newspaper clippings about family betrayals and revenge. The third was empty except for a single word written on paper. Soon, I reported everything to campus security and local police, adding to our growing file on Monica's harassment. They increased patrols near my dorm, but admitted there was little they could do without proof she was nearby. The packages had been mailed from different locations across several states. My parents called daily, their worry palpable even through the phone. They received similar packages at home. My mother's pregnancy was progressing well, but the stress of Monica's renewed campaign weighed heavily. It installed a comprehensive security system and changed all the locks again. The harassment escalated subtly. My social media accounts were flooded with fake friend requests from profiles using photos of Monica at different ages. Emails arrived from anonymous addresses, each containing a single line from our childhood memories twisted into threats. Someone kept calling my dorm room at 3 a.m. and hanging up. Cole proved to be an unexpected ally. He helped me document everything, even setting up a hidden camera to catch whoever was sliding notes under our door. We caught a girl I didn't recognize on video, but when confronted, she claimed someone had paid her $20 to deliver the notes. The description matched Monica, but we couldn't prove it. My uncle flew out for a weekend visit, bringing news that made my blood run cold. Monica had left her grandparents' house 3 weeks ago. They'd woken up to find her room empty, her belongings gone, and a note saying she had unfinished business. They'd filed a missing person report, but Monica was 18 now, legally an adult. We reinforced every security measure possible. Campus security had her photo and was watching for her. I varied my routes to class, never walked alone after dark, and kept my location services turned off. But Monica had always been patient, methodical. She was somewhere out there, planning. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Derek reached out through a mutual friend, wanting to talk. We met in a public place during daylight, my uncle present as a witness. Derek looked terrible, thin, and anxious. He'd been receiving threats too, ever since he distanced himself from Monica. He revealed that Monica had contacted him before disappearing, trying to recruit him for what she called her final performance. She talked about making me understand what it felt like to lose everything, to be replaced, to be forgotten. Derek had refused and blocked her, but he'd kept screenshots of her messages. The messages were disturbing. Monica had developed an elaborate plan involving multiple people, fake social media accounts, and a systematic campaign to isolate me from everyone in my new life. She'd studied my class schedule, learned my routines, even researched my professors and new friends. Her obsession had deepened during her time away. Armed with this new evidence, we worked with law enforcement to obtain a restraining order. It felt like a flimsy piece of paper against Monica's determination, but it was something. We also hired a private investigator to track her movements, though she'd become skilled at avoiding detection. The next few weeks were a nightmare of vigilance. I spotted Monica twice, or thought I did. Once in the library stacks, a glimpse of familiar hair disappearing around a corner. Once outside the dining hall, a figure in a hoodie with her distinctive walk. But by the time security arrived, she was gone. If she'd ever been there at all. My grades suffered as paranoia consumed me. Professors noticed my distraction, my constant checking of exits, my refusal to sit with my back to doors. The counseling center tried to to help, but how could I explain that my cousin, who pretended to be my sister for 13 years, was stalking me because she'd been forced to replace my dead sister? Then Monica made her boldest move yet. I returned from class to find my dorm room ransacked. Nothing stolen, but everything moved slightly. Photos turned face down, books rearranged, clothes refolded differently. It was psychological warfare at its finest. Security footage showed a maintenance worker entering, but the worker didn't match any staff records. Cole had been in class during the break-in, alibied completely, but he was shaken, talking about transferring rooms or even schools. I couldn't blame him. Monica's campaign was affecting everyone around me, exactly as she'd intended. I was becoming isolated, just like she planned. My parents wanted me to come home, but I refused. Running would mean Monica had won. Besides, home wasn't any safer. She'd proven she could reach me anywhere. My uncle supported my decision to stay, though he hired additional security to patrol near my dorm. The private investigator finally got a lead. Monica had been using stolen identities to move around, paying cash for everything. She'd been spotted at a motel 40 miles from campus, but was gone by the time police arrived. She left behind maps of campus with my routine marked in red ink. I started carrying pepper spray and a personal alarm. My uncle taught me basic self-defense moves. I hated that Monica had driven me to this, but I hated more that she was winning. Every day I spent looking over my shoulder was a victory for her. She was making me live in fear, just as she'd claimed I'd made her live in shadow. The climax came during finals week. I was studying in my room when the fire alarm went off. As everyone evacuated, I noticed smoke coming from under my door. Real smoke. I grabbed my laptop and emergency bag, joining the crowd fleeing the building. Outside, I spotted her immediately. Monica stood across the street, watching the chaos with satisfaction. When our eyes met, she smiled and gave a small wave, and she melted back into the crowd before I could alert security. The fire was small, contained to a storage closet near my room. The message was clear. She could reach me anywhere. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living in fear. Couldn't let Monica control my life from the shadows. I worked with my uncle and the police to set a trap. We leaked information through channels we knew Monica monitored, suggesting I'd be alone in a specific location at a certain time. The location was the campus counseling center after hours. I'd supposedly gotten special permission for a late session. In reality, police were stationed throughout the building. I sat in the waiting room, pretending to read while every nerve screamed danger. My uncle waited in a nearby office with security. Monica appeared exactly when expected. She entered through a service door, probably picked like all the others. She moved silently down the hallway toward where she thought I'd be vulnerable. But as she reached for the counseling room door, the police emerged from their positions. The arrest was anticlimactic. Monica didn't run or fight. She simply looked at me with those cold eyes and smiled. As they cuffed her, she called out that this wasn't over, that I'd never be free of her, that she was my sister, whether I liked it or not, and family was forever. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Monica faced charges for stalking, breaking and entering, harassment, and violating the restraining order. The evidence was overwhelming. Derek testified about her plans. The private investigator presented proof of her movements. My family's long documentation of her abuse finally served its purpose. Monica's court-appointed lawyer tried to argue mental illness stemming from childhood trauma. While true, it didn't excuse years of calculated abuse. The judge, reviewing the extensive evidence, wasn't sympathetic. Monica received 2 years in prison and mandatory psychiatric treatment. It felt both too much and not enough. My parents attended the sentencing. They looked older, worn down by the ordeal. My mother was showing now, the new life growing inside her, a reminder that our family could move forward. They didn't speak to Monica, but I saw my mother crying as Monica was led away in shackles. I returned to campus trying to reclaim normalcy. Cole had stuck it out, earning my eternal gratitude. My professors allowed me to make up missed work. Slowly, I began to rebuild the college experience Monica had tried to steal. But I still checked locks twice and startled at unexpected sounds. My uncle helped me process everything through long phone conversations. He reminded me that Monica was a victim too, twisted by circumstances beyond her control. But being a victim didn't give her the right to victimize others. I could feel compassion for the 4-year-old who'd lost everything while still protecting myself from the adult she'd become. As freshman year ended, I felt cautiously optimistic. Monica was contained, getting help she desperately needed. My parents were healing, preparing for their new child with hard-won wisdom. I'd survived her campaign of terror and refused to let it define me. The hypervigilance might never fully fade, but I was learning to live with it. Summer brought new challenges and revelations. I worked a job near campus rather than going home, needing space to process everything. My parents visited monthly, their relationship with me stronger for having weathered the storm. We talked honestly now, no more comfortable lies or willful blindness. My baby brother was born in July. My parents named him after my uncle, honoring the man who'd forced our family to face truth. Holding him for the first time, I felt something shift inside me. This child would never be a replacement for anyone. He was himself, complete and whole, loved for exactly who he was. Monica wrote me a letter from prison. I debated reading it for weeks before curiosity won. It was short, filled with the same blame and self-pity as always. But at the end, almost as an afterthought, she'd written 5 words that might have been the closest she could come to accountability. I'm tired of hating you. I didn't respond. Maybe someday I'd find forgiveness, but that day wasn't today. For now, it was enough that she was getting help, that my family was healing, that I was building a life untainted by her shadow. The scared 12-year-old who'd pinched his sister's leg in desperate self-defense had grown into a man who could stand up to his demons. Sophomore year began with genuine excitement. I changed dorms, made new friends who knew nothing of my past, joined clubs that interested me. Monica's release date loomed in the future, but I refused to live in anticipation of it. I'd spent too many years letting her control my life. Not anymore. My parents sold our childhood home, too haunted by memories to stay. They bought a smaller place across town, setting up a nursery free of ghosts. They sent photos of my brother taking his first steps in a hallway where no one had ever been pushed downstairs, playing in a yard where violence had never taken root. I majored in social work, driven by a need to help kids trapped in toxic family dynamics. My advisor warned about the emotional toll, but I'd already survived worse than most would ever see. If my experience could help one child escape their Monica, it would transform trauma into purpose. The nightmares faded gradually. Therapy helped, as did time and distance. I learned to trust again, even dated occasionally. I told partners about Monica eventually, watching their faces process the horror of it. Some couldn't handle the baggage, others admired my resilience. I learned to be okay with both reactions. My uncle remained my closest confidant. We forged an unbreakable bond through crisis. He visited every few months, always checking my security measures, always reminding me that strength meant knowing when to ask for help. It saved my life in more ways than one, and I'd never stop being grateful. As Monica's release date approached, we prepared carefully. New restraining orders were filed, security measures were updated. My parents' new address was kept strictly confidential. I graduated by then, working at a youth shelter in a city 3 states away. Distance felt like wisdom, not cowardice. The day she got out, I held my breath, but the dreaded contact never came. Through legal channels, we learned she'd moved in with a distant relative in another state, continuing therapy, working a simple job. Maybe prison had changed her. Maybe she was just biding her time. Either way, I chose to live as if it were the former. Years passed. I built a career helping at-risk youth, married a wonderful woman who understood my scars, even had children of my own. My parents thrived with their second chance at raising a child without grief's shadow. My brother grew up loved and protected, never knowing the violence that had once defined our family. Sometimes I wondered about Monica, whether she'd found peace or remained consumed by resentment, whether she thought of me as the brother who betrayed her or the cousin she'd terrorized. But mostly, I didn't think of her at all. She'd stolen enough of my life. She wouldn't get any more. The last time I saw her was at a gas station 5 years after her release. Pure chance, wrong place, wrong time. We locked eyes across the pumps. She looked older, tired, wearing a work uniform from a local restaurant. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she nodded once and drove away. I never saw her again. I still double-check locks. I still prefer sitting where I can see exits. Some wounds leave permanent marks, but I've built a good life on the foundation of hard-won survival. My children know they're loved for exactly who they are. My marriage is built on truth, not comfortable lies. The cycle of replacement and resentment ends with me. Looking at my own kids, I sometimes think about that scared 4-year-old girl who lost her parents and got handed an impossible role. I feel compassion for her, even as I remain vigilant against the woman she became. Trauma explains, but doesn't excuse. Understanding doesn't require reconciliation. Some relationships are too broken to repair, and that's okay. My family learned through pain what should have been obvious. Children aren't interchangeable. Grief can't be transferred from one loss to another. Love isn't enough without truth, and sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone someone is refused to enable their destruction, even when it means letting them go. I keep one photo from our childhood, taken before I knew the truth. Monica and I at some family gathering, her arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling, unaware of the lies beneath the surface. I keep it as a reminder that things aren't always what they seem, that performance can mask pain, that the most dangerous threats often come wrapped in familiar faces. But I also keep it because, for all the horror that followed, that moment was real. Two damaged children trying to be siblings, failing in ways that would define both our lives. I couldn't save her from her resentment any more than she could save me from her abuse. We were both victims of adult choices made in grief's fog. My story doesn't end with reconciliation or forgiveness. It ends with acceptance. Monica exists somewhere in the world, living her life far from mine. I exist here, surrounded by the family I chose and built. We're no longer sister and brother, tormentor and victim. We're just two strangers who share a complicated history and the wisdom to stay apart. That's enough, more than enough. It's freedom.